Hey everyone. So remember, my content this week is going to be all centered on how to find ideas for a startup, particularly for bootstrapping a startup, although these ideas apply across, the domain regardless of how you're funding it. But keeping an ideas notebook is something that I highly recommend, and I'm always so surprised by how few people actually do it, especially if you're actively looking for a startup idea and not building something already. This is something that you have to do. And it doesn't matter, how you do it. You can use pen and paper, although that can be problematic unless you always keep it, on you. At one time when I was using pen and paper to do this, I had like a small notebook. You can find these small kind of almost like field notebooks, and you just keep a small pen with you, keep it in your pocket or something. That became problematic though, and really I stopped doing that. So you can keep it digitally. One suggestion that a person I know made, which I really agree with, is if you're going to use something on your phone, you're going to want to, it's often good to use native applications. So maybe Apple Notes. And the reason for that is you want to reduce any kind of friction to notating the idea. If you got to take a second to pull up a web application, you're not going to notate these ideas. But that's why Apple Notes can be great, because obviously that's a native application. It's quick to load. You just put it in there and you're good to go. I also use Notion for this, which I love Notion, but you can use whatever you want is my point here. But the general approach you want to do is every pain point, and specifically the digital pain points in many cases that you come across, although it can be a physical pain point and that you see out in life with a business or whatever, but every one you come across, you notate it in this notebook throughout your day. And if possible, sketch out some ideas about how software could be built to solve that idea. If you don't have time, it's usually good to just notate it down. But the key thing here that a lot of people don't do, I found, is the second part, because notating the ideas is just one thing, right? You got to come back and periodically review them, find out, how realistic is that idea, spend some time kind of going over them and cleaning those ideas up, and never get rid of them is usually my advice, but you want to kind of rank them in your notebook. And this is just my personal approach, but you want to kind of rank them by their feasibility as far as you're concerned. And then remember, while you're doing this, I wanted to say, don't get obsessed with finding the perfect idea, because the idea matters little, to be honest. It's really, honestly, what you're going to realize as you start to build things is, especially once you start to build a team, you're going to have this realization. You won't believe me now. Trust me, you will not believe me, but eventually you will. And that is that the idea of what you're building, it really doesn't matter, honestly. It doesn't. In fact, I was talking to my friend Ross about this earlier today. We could build anything. The product, it's not about the product ultimately, right? It's about building the team that builds the product. That's the core philosophy you have to move to. And, if you're a solopreneur, you are the team. And so you're building your skills, right? But you got to keep in mind, it's very hard to always stay a solopreneur, although people have done it. Peter Levels has done it. And he kills it. But you'll notice, you can go to Twitter and look at his content, and he's highly focused on these ideas, big time. I learned a lot by just listening to him and also building things and failing. But yeah, you have to, just build something, pick an idea. In fact, you probably want to choose the most approachable one, especially if you're bootstrapping. Complexity, super complex ideas will absolutely kill a bootstrap startup. So you want to choose the simplest idea and likely start implementing that. And when you start doing that, you're going to be surprised with all the other ideas. You're going to have so many ideas coming in when you're building something that you got to be careful with, shiny object syndrome. You can't just keep switching, but on the same thing, you have to balance it, right? Because if that idea of yours is not taking off, if you've spent a certain amount of time on it and it's simply not taking off, it doesn't mean that it's going to fail necessarily. It doesn't even mean it's a bad idea that someone else couldn't have take off. But it just means that you can't attract people and illustrate and solve that pain point for them now. So yeah, build one, and remember, like I always say, validate the idea, and ideally sell it before you build it, just like I did. Well, these days with our products, we do that with everything basically, but exactly like I did with getvalidation.co, literally sold access to the idea before it was built. And to be clear, this isn't finished built. We're going to build this eventually. We have a need for it for some of the things we're building now, actually, because there's a lot of interesting features that could be added to this. But yeah, the basic idea here is to, validate that you can acquire customers by actually acquiring them before you build it. And a lot of people think that people won't pay for something before it's built, but they absolutely will. If you can sell that vision, and if you have a reputation for delivering, which that helps as well. Once people start to realize, okay, this guy, can get things out there and he supports what he sells and he keeps them running, and he will get it done. Once you have that reputation, you absolutely can pre-sell software. And obviously that's a great way to validate it, right? If you literally have people that have purchased it beforehand, that's absolute validation. But that's it for this Keeping Ideas notebook thing. Super simple, but so few people keep it, and it's really essential for finding that first idea in many ways.